Good morning, everyone. Today, I want to talk a little bit about something I've been thinking about all week, and that is that one of the problems that we are all facing right now is that we all think we're right. It reminds me of this old story that I remember reading when I was in college about three blind men and an elephant. Now, this is a story about a group of blind men who came across an elephant and they all tried to describe it to each other. One man started off by saying that the elephant was long and skinny, kind of like a snake. And the second man, came out saying that the first man didn't know what he was talking about because the elephant was clearly like the trunk of a tree, round and thick. And then the third man angrily barked and said that neither of the two men knew what the hell they were talking about because the elephant was wide and circular, like a giant disc. Finally, a fourth man came into the picture who wasn't blind, who explained to the men what the elephant truly looked like. And in disbelief, all the blind men ridiculed and laughed at that man who could see and said that he was crazy and even laughed at the idea of being able to see in the first place. Now, each of the men were obviously talking about a different part of the elephant, the trunk, the leg, and the ear, respectively. And the man who could see was talking about the entire elephant, right? The whole elephant. Now, each of the men, including the one who could see, were right and yet at the same time wrong according to their perspective. The men were blind, right? They were literally unable to see what was right in front of them. So they failed to understand the whole of the elephant. And the man who could see could clearly share what the elephant looked like and even understood the individual parts, but could not identify with the blind man either way because he wasn't blind. And because their experience was limited to a certain part of the elephant, again, they assumed that the elephant was the only part that they could see. This is true, right? It's both true. It's truth for them, especially when you're blinded or if you've never been blind. Now, the governor of Texas dropped a bomb this week. In case, for those of you who don't live in Texas, they lifted the mask mandates. And for some of us, some people here lost their shit. It was horrific and devastating news. For others, there were some of us that we have a sense of joy and pride and happiness. Now, in a sense, we are all blinded by our own truths and perspective. And the worst part of it all is that it brings out the worst in humanity. We certainly don't need more division, but unfortunately, we got a major dose of it this week. And if you want to improve your health, if you want, to improve your relationships, your sleep, your stress, or just be happier, you should consider giving up the compulsion to be right. We are all conditioned from birth, it seems, to fight for our piece of the pie, to defend ourselves, or at least convince people that our views are right. And we do it with our families, right? We do it at school, you do it at work or at social gatherings. If we're proved wrong, we feel somehow lessened. We feel defeated or humiliated. And in some cases, being proved wrong can upset our entire worldview, leaving us unanchored and incomplete. And the problem is that we all come with the necessary equipment to fall into the always be right trap. And opinions are like belly buttons. We all have them. So we have all the necessary ingredients to breed disagreement and conflict and resentment. And just like your belly button, few of us like other people to poke at them. Now, I believe that the need to be right is actually a form of violence. At its mildest, it's inflexibility. At its height, it manifests as dominance, which is ironically the opposite of one of the first lessons that we learn in elementary school, right? Like teamwork. Teamwork makes the dream work. Now, the compulsion to inflict our opinions of the world on another actually originates in fear. Its opposites are humility and compassion. Even the golden rule tells us to treat others in a way we would like to be treated personally. Now, if you just keep banging away at somebody until they flinch and accept your point of view finally, you're probably not a very happy person. You're especially not happy with that other individual, at least in your relationship, or secretly, you need validation to feel good about yourself. And that's equally unhealthy. Now, there are a lot of people right now who are upset, frustrated, they're emotionally drained, and even scarred from the pandemic. And I believe that we need to start looking at the larger context, the bigger picture of the COVID-19 pandemic and not just its individual parts. In functional medicine and chiropractic philosophy, they both of those have taught me that to always take a step back and look at the bigger picture. And part of that is looking at processes and using a different lens. And a big lens here is really a transition in human history. I think it's very important how we think about COVID-19 and that we don't catastrophize it any more than we have to. We shouldn't give it any more power in that sense. Of course, those of us who have been exposed to it, maybe you had a bad infection because of it, or maybe you lost somebody special. It's hurtful, no doubt. But I think it's very important to maintain a healthy balance in our overall perspective. Let's try not to be blinded by our own perspectives and look at the bigger picture for a moment. What we have all gone through over the last year is not just personal, but global. We all know about climate change, right? It's a global event, but most of us don't really sense it that much. I mean, unless you're in the midst of a forest fire in California, or you live on in a place where you can see literally the, shelves of ice that are falling off, or maybe you're stuck without water and electricity in a winter storm in Texas. Most of us don't really think of it that much. Either way, the pandemic is global. And the importance of this is that everyone on the planet pretty much has had to grapple with potential death because of it. And potential death makes us do some crazy shit. It makes you change your priorities. And this is crucial to understand because for most of our lives, we've been really living in, especially in the Western world, an unsustainable or frenetic existence. We've been living this consumer-oriented existence where valuing the advancement of our material lives, right? Bigger house, bigger car, nicer clothes, vacations, shiny objects. We put more value on those things and less value on our relational lives, on our connectedness, on our communities, our families, all to the point to where it became fragmented, where suicide skyrocketed. Even before the pandemic, suicide was bad. And now post-COVID, it's one of the scariest things that we can really talk about. We clearly needed a reorientation, and I'd never wish the pandemic on anyone, but I do believe that this is a sort of reorientation that many humans needed. And yet others are unfortunately going to be grappling with over the next several years in a negative way. And I hope and pray that we all develop the wisdom to work together to address inequality, all the things that we're seeing, the anger people have of having to wear a mask, the anger of dealing with a virus that has a 98% survivability rate, right? It's a 2% case mortality rate at its worst. The fear and the social concerns of people who want to mask up, those people who want to get vaccinated, and then, yes, those who choose, and it's their right to choose not to. And that we can use this as a way of learning and not just fall into the catastrophic mindset that is so easy to do. It's easy to do that. It's hard to learn how to see the other parts of the elephant that we ignore, but very much make up humanity, right? The ugly parts that we don't want to pay attention to, but are important. I mean, these could be your own brothers and sisters, your mothers and fathers, your cousins, the person at work whose personal feelings, emotions, and opinions you're blinded to. The pandemic is a defining event in human history, no doubt. I have the privilege of meeting with and talking about personal experiences with people, and I'd like to share that there are people who are remembering what's important: relationships, connectedness, their health. People are not just, spending time at a mall anymore. They're spending more time in nature, which I think is amazing. People are not driving all the time, but have become interconnected with their personal environment. They're now learning about streets that are just behind their house that they never knew were there. I have patients who are in the worst state of health pre-COVID and are now living the best lives that they've ever lived. They are thriving. I know there are millions of people who are stressed. There's, those of us who've lost jobs, there's family dysfunctions, but on the flip side, people are saying, they're literally telling me things like, I don't want to go back to my previous life. We've recovered the daughter that we previously lost. Another person shared with me that they can garden again. You know, she finally can live her true self. Another person shared with me that, you know, commuting has been reduced and it's given them extra hours of their life back that they desperately needed. We need to look at the bigger picture of this pandemic and realize that while all our lives have been reshaped, there's a balanced perspective that is actually very healthy and welcoming. One that millions of people are thriving through, literally transforming their future and changing their destiny for the better. And that's a beautiful thing. There's always a combination of order and chaos, and you cannot have one without the other. You know, the entire universe is beautifully chaotic and entropic. Life, biology, your physiology is about bringing order to that chaos for a moment. So let's try our best to appreciate that our own misery and our own fears and our own concerns are equally matched with someone out there, someone else's happiness, someone else's bravery, someone else's serenity. And yours is no less and theirs is no more than you. Not one is more important than the other. I really do hope that you understand what I'm trying to share here. Share this with people that you feel that need to hear this. And I really do hope that you're able to go out and do good things today.